Without further ado, let me hand it back over to Henry.
Oh, thanks, Jason, and thanks everyone again for taking some time. We're all busy, and I'm going to try and pique your interest in what's happening in and around invoice management. And today, of course, we have a special focus for users of Microsoft Dynamics. My name is Henry Ijams. I'm the Managing Director of PayStream Advisors, and I've been working with PayStream for the last 11 years. I'm the founder of the company. We're based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we have a really interesting business. We get to work with some of the leading companies and companies like yours to help them understand how to bring innovation into their purchasing and payments operation. PayStream's business is kind of like being an architect. Before you design a new room or a home, PayStream's analysts and consultants help our clients design those processes before they start. As analysts, we study the different technologies. So today I'm going to be talking a lot about the impact of automation on accounts payable in medium and large organizations. And I'm going to share my experiences as a consultant for the last 11 years working with literally hundreds of companies that have gone through the transformative process of moving from a paper-based AP world to one that's, well, paper, well, not less, but less paper, but not fully paperless for most companies. So our agenda today is going to talk about who we are, why we're experts in helping you think about what that might mean for you. We're going to talk about the current state of accounts payable in North America, the roadmaps to get paper-free, and then we're going to give you some very specific steps to give you some ideas of what you can do to move to more of an automated environment in your own accounts payable process. So today, our AP process is kind of like a Rubik's Cube. You remember those cool things with the sides? This is the Rubik's Cube that's been all jumbled up. And that's the way we are, unfortunately, in AP, because we're dealing with a paper environment. And even worse, the paper is all over our organization. We don't know where it is, who has it, or we don't know what the data on there is about and how it can help us. In other words, it hasn't been entered into our accounting system. It's not in Dynamics yet. It's floating around our organization. So currently, AP focuses on the data entry, reconciliation. We're a control and risk function. And we're answering key questions about, did we account for this properly? Primarily accounting function. What did we buy, and is it allocated to the right business unit? Has it been approved by the right people? Tomorrow, this is changing. We want to have alignment of that data, similar to what we can achieve inside of Dynamics once it's all, well, in the system. Imagine the power that we have once it's all in the system, the wonderful reports that we can run, the automated routing. So we got to answer some new questions, and we can, and we will. That's the neat part. The future AP process is where these are all aligned. The Rubik's Cube is all put back together again, but we're answering new questions that I'm going to show you, well, deliver advanced value, like when is the invoice due? When should we pay? Not, gosh, we need to hurry up and pay. And why did we buy that? So in other words, we can answer new questions by automating the accounts payable process. And that's what's going to happen. This evolution here means that, well, AP is shifting from a back office function, which was very accounting-centric, to more becoming a purchase-to-pay function. That's a new term, probably for many of you. But we're calling this collaborative convergence. In other words, we're building and we're seeing a collaboration with procurement and accounting and finance and accounts payable really becoming one. In fact, today I'm on client site, not a very big company, about 50,000 annual invoices. And today they have already merged accounting and purchasing into one department. Yes, they can still maintain controls. Yes, accounting still oversees the process. But procurement and AP are working so closely together that they put them under the same management team. That's becoming more and more common, and we call it purchase to pay. In other words, we think of not just the payables process of getting the invoice loaded in the system, approved and paid, but we think of it more holistically. And that's some of what I'm going to talk together. So purchase to pay, well, perhaps it's not happening yet at your company, but I think there's a shift happening. And I intentionally, use some materials here called Shift Happen to give you a sense of how fast we see this move happening. Now, this was done a few years ago, but it was predicted by 2010 that information would double every 72 hours. And take this little factoid, that a week's worth of the New York Times contains more information than a person was likely to come across in their lifetime in the 1890. 1890. That means that today there's a tremendous amount of information, 40 exabytes, created every year. More than we had done in the previous 5,000 years, and it's doubling every 2 years. So that if you know someone who's going to college, it means that after their, 2-year degree, half of what they learned is going to be outdated by the time they graduate. Why am I showing you this shift happen? Because that shift is dramatically impacting the basic things that we do with old processes like invoices. So let's get back to our accounting story. The mission here is, Tom Cruise so elegantly showed us here as he was skipping down on MI1 here. The mission is to get rid of it, to automate that process. So we're going to have our first poll question. We want to know what your top initiative is for 2012. And let's bring up that poll question just to see what our audience is thinking about. And you can go ahead and vote here, and then we'll share the results.
Okay, Henry, I'm just going to bring up that first poll. There we go.
Now, is it getting your AP automation project started? Is it implementing an existing project? Or are you working on developing a plan? Or are you still just getting started?
Henry, I think we may have a different question up here, but still an important one.
Yeah, this is
I apologize for that.
No problem. This is. Let's start with what your pains are, and then we're going to come back to what initiatives you're working on. So is it lost invoices, too much paper, data entry, lack of invoice visibility? What's the mission? What are we going to try to solve? And let's go ahead and get ready to close the polls. Thanks, everyone, for voting. And we're going to share the results with you. What's the biggest pain in your AP process? Too much paper, lost
couple more seconds, probably.
Data entry time. Or do you have some staff turnover or a poor ability to train your staff or staff the process? Well, I think all of those are probably happening at all of the companies today. All of you today are suffering from, information overload around paper. We're moving into this information society. The reason I was using the shift happen metaphor is that we can see how rapidly things are changing for us. Think of the power that you have on your phone. And think of what you can do with your telephone, your mobile device, your PDA, your Android, your iPhone, compared to what you can do with your accounting system. Sort of scary, isn't it? It's kind of scary in that we have such incredible power outside of our ERP systems, but we have such incredible power at home, but why can't we use it at the office? Well, the good news here is that we can. So let's go ahead and close that poll and talk about what's changing. What's changing is that it used to be that the ERP was everything that we had. It was our be-all, end-all. AX, our Microsoft Dynamics platform, think about when you implemented it and what a leap it was of improvements to your accounting process versus what you had before. So many of our clients that are Dynamics users so pleased with the power that they get from those systems. But what's happening now is that web-based or bolt-on solutions from a whole host of providers, companies like Metafile, Perdagio, ReadSoft, and literally 50 other providers of incredibly to provide an incredibly powerful solution which allow you to take the basic ERP system, Dynamics, and supercharge it. So let me tell you how that works, and let me talk about AP automation. AP automation is an amalgam of bringing things together, from the paper invoice management to the matching of the workflow to electronic invoicing. I'm going to stop there because most of us want more electronic documents. We want to get rid of the paper inside of our accounts payable department. How do we do it? Well, the glue that makes this work is in this red area around what we call matching and workflow. AP automation includes all of this. And while many of you may have started your process thinking about, say, OCR, very common. I spoke to a client yesterday who was saying, oh yeah, we want to implement OCR. And that's our answer. I said, well, do you have a matching and workflow system in place? Do you have the core engine that's going to connect this to the ERP? Oh no, we don't have that yet. So okay, so you're going to buy the OCR, the automated data capture, but you're going to have to manually then get the data into our accounting system, then you're going to have to route it. So that may not be the best. So we talked about a lot of our companies want to start here. Start out, if you're a PO-centric organization, you want to start out with, you're going to do some PO matching, and certainly you're going to integrate it with the Dynamics. But the core here is approval workflow. Because many AP documents, and depending on your organization, may be needed to be routed out to an individual, an approver. Somebody who's going to say, yes, I've received that. Yes, the accounting data is correct. Yes, I have the right authority. Yes, we have the right accounting codes on it. And that's really the critical element that we see is missing, and it's why we have such a paper-centric process. We need input from our approvers to make it work. If we're going to move to electronic invoicing, we've got to adopt this core piece of workflow in order to make it happen. If we're going to move forward with paperless process, we've got to move forward with workflow and integration to the ERP. Now notice here that the U.S. automation adoption rate of AP automation overall is about 46%. And you can see where your overall industry is by this survey. If you're on the right, if you're in the education or public sector, typically only 15 or so % of those companies have adopted the AP automation. What we're specifically talking about and what do we consider AP automation is workflow. You must have matching and workflow technology in order to be considered having any baseline AP automation. It's really sort of the beginning or the foundation of any forward progress with moving to a paperless AP process. Notice that other industries, though, you can see that some here on the left side, like chemical industries, retail, professional services, aerospace, lots of these industries are highly automated in AP operations. Some 50, 60, 70% of them have automated it. But by and large, we still see less than 50% of adoption. And so we've plotted this and the other technologies that we're going to talk about in terms of best practices and helping you think about where they fall. If we start on the right side, in the decline phase, and the laggards are still doing a lot of paper checks. Now, interestingly enough, paper checks are going down at about a 3% rate for business-to-business transactions. That's good. It's being replaced by purchasing cards, ACH payments, electronic payments to our suppliers. It's mature, and some 70% of organizations have adopted electronic payments in one form or another. The challenge is, well, not every supplier is enrolled, so further opportunity there, certainly. And what we like especially about electronic payments is it allows organizations to get moving on this innovation life cycle. Now, coming up the curve in the maturity phase is front-end imaging and workflow. That's where we're going to use imaging and workflow automation at the front end of our business process. We're going to centralize all invoice receipt and then route, using the workflow technologies, route those invoices out for approval. EDI and purchasing cards in the majority phase. I think what's on the left here, there's some other pretty interesting things happening. And the innovators are working on things like supply chain finance, dynamic discounting, and electronic invoicing. But in order to do that, they have to have the core workflow component in place first in order to move forward. So the foundation, as I mentioned here, to get started, is thinking about a current state assessment. If you wanted to move forward with your process, you're going to use a current state assessment and then benchmark yourself compared to where your peer organizations are. I'm going to talk about why that's so important in a few moments. The next piece is, where do you want to be? Identifying what technology best fits your needs will help you create that roadmap, as PayStream's analysts call it, to define the right kinds of projects and to justify the investment. Essentially what I'm saying here is that moving forward with automation is, well, no longer a nice to have, but it's rather happy to be that, well, it's just going to be the way this is done. And most of our suppliers really would like to give us electronic invoices. In fact, from our medium and small business surveys, we know that some 40% of small business invoices or medium enterprise invoices are emailed around. So they're really already electronic, although the reality is, of course, when they get inside of our companies, we print them out and then we wrap them around and sign them. So we're partially electronic. We're getting there. We're getting PDF files. But we're getting emails, but we're not getting the electronic data, and we're still having to deal with it in a paper fashion. So where are you today, and how did you assess it? Well, first thing you want to know is, what are your current costs? How much does it cost you to process an invoice? It's pretty easy to answer that. Take the labor that you have, cost of that labor, and divide it by the number of invoices and come up with a cost per invoice. That's the first piece. Now, what that does is it gives you a sense of where you are and how you might compare it to other companies, industry, or sector. That's sort of documenting the facts and figures. One of the tricks that we use as consultants is to help our clients understand what is the cost of processing an invoice that's clean, one that comes in and gets processed without any extra work, versus the cost of processing those invoices that get stuck. And this is a big piece of where a lot of the excess cost comes from, that the invoices that don't have the right information on them are missing the right approver, using the wrong project code, the wrong accounting string. Those invoices can't be processed and require lots of extra labor. What we typically find is that some 10 to 20 or 30% of invoices are stuck in that category, which means that they can handle, well, maybe 3, 4, or 5 touches in order to get them approved. What that means is that they're 3, 4, or 5 times more costly to process than the overall average. And that's a pretty important area because it helps us understand what the benefit is. Once you determine your facts and figures, how many invoices you have, your cost per invoice, then you want to help determine the right projects for you and help prioritize those projects. Which one are you going to do? And how are you going to build your business case? So if we started with how much does it cost me per invoice, that's a great starting point. So let's say it's $7. Well, what if you could process an invoice with an automated fashion for only $2.50? And this is what we're seeing today. Companies that go through automation can typically lower their costs by anywhere from 60 to 70%, even within the first year or two. The issue is that for many of us, we want to move forward with automation, but we don't necessarily have a way to communicate with our seniors about why we should do it or how we should do it, because our executives don't understand accounts payable. Let's think of it this way. When was the last time the CEO or the CFO of your company spent a day in accounts payable? Do they really understand the business process? Do they really care? Well, probably not, unless they understood that there's a large gap between the way you're doing business today and the way you could be doing business if it was automated. If you were really empowering your Dynamics platform to do what it could do with one of the solutions that's available that enhances the application. That's really where we try to focus our energies at PayStream Advisors, is to help our clients understand the benefits and the value. So Jason, let's bring up question number 2 while we're thinking about some of these next processes here. You're going to help me.
Okay. So the next question we have is, what is your most important financial objective this year? Would that be a good one, or would you rather look at barriers to improving? Okay.
Yeah, let's work on that one. Most important.
Okay, we are opening it up now.
So, are you going to automate more of the financial processes, or are you trying to improve delivery to your customers, the improvers, the people that really, well, they drive the revenues of our business? Are we trying to improve our customer satisfaction, the customer journey, improve our costs? Are we trying to improve controls and visibility? We've got a lot of opportunity, and we want to know where you want to go with them, so we can help you think about where it might be today. Now, when I was talking about it, the executives, one of the big challenges that we know is that lots of folks have thought about for years how to automate accounts payable, but couldn't get their organizations wrapped around the spending of some money, allocating of some resources. And there used to be two truths in the world. One was death and the other one was taxes. You've heard that before. The third one I'd like to add is shortage of IT resources. There's never going to be enough IT resources to do every project that you want to do. And so we see a lot of opportunity when we think about moving forward with this success is, can we do it? Can we integrate with Dynamics without a lot of use of IT resources? And the great news is, because of all the changes in the applications that have been developed specifically to improve the delivery of accounts payable automation and enhance Dynamics platform, we see a tremendous acceleration in two things. One, in time, we see customers implement new accounts payable systems, and even better, accelerate the return on investment. So you shouldn't be shy about the business case that you have, because we haven't been on a client in our last 11 years that didn't have less than a 3-year implementation return on investment on automating the process. But more recently, it's shortening. It's turning into 18 and 10 and 12 months, because the cost of the upfront technology is going down dramatically, and so much of it is now being delivered via the web or software as a service model. Of course, our stakeholders are not just the approvers, not just the CFOs and our IT CIOs, but our stakeholders are the people who are inside of our organizations that want to make it better. Because if accounts payable is not working well, it means that it's slowing them down from doing their core job. And their core job, as much as we'd like them to think that it's accounts payable, it's not. Their core job is doing something else for the business. So let me define a little bit more about what we're talking about here with invoice automation and talk about the cloud. The cloud here is using this internet-based computing, a shared services environment. It's a natural evolution of where we've been with outsourced services, but it's now outsourced services with a twist. And we've seen a tremendous change here in this market. It used to be, when we first started studying the accounts payable universe, when we thought about accounts payable automation, it means that you had to install lots of software to work inside of our company. Imaging systems, document capture technologies like OCR, electronic payment tools. Well, today, more than 55% of all of these implementations are done on cloud-based platforms. That means web-based. So it shortens the training time and the implementation time, because it means that we can take advantage of the technology very quickly with lots of change in the process. Some core choices and options that we see here is around licensed software, which is the traditional way to do it, which means to buy a piece of software or enhance a piece of software from a company like, say, Knowledge Lake or 170 Systems, now part of Kofax. Install that technology on your servers and connect it to Dynamics on the back end. So they're using the same shared data structure. The images are stored right alongside or inside of Dynamics. In fact, some of these solution providers have made it seamless so that when you're in Dynamics, you don't even realize that you're looking at an outside tool, that's also software, but it's a separate piece of a separate component. Now, as I mentioned, the more popular option in the last 2 years has been this cloud or on-demand software, where the system is hosted, not within your firewall. And the extension that we're seeing on this, that of course it's lower upfront cost, but another key component is that we're seeing companies today let other folks open the mail. In other words, they're combining outsourced scan and capture services with the technology platform. So there's a number of solution providers that essentially open the invoice mail, scan those invoices, and put them into your system without having anyone in AP have to touch a piece of paper. And that's becoming more popular as a way to reduce upfront costs. But there's, well, a whole host of ways to go about the operation. One way is to bring in the technology in-house. It's what we call the licensed option. And the other one is to utilize the services of cloud. A hybrid model is to utilize the services of both. And we see that hybrid model very popular in the world of electronic invoice. So, of course, we all want to get electronic invoices into our system. How do we do that? What's the technology that we bring them in? Well, the best practice is to have some kind of an electronic portal or invoice network so that our suppliers can interact with us and upload their invoices electronically. And for those suppliers that can give us EDI files, we want to put those into that network or portal as well. What's different here in these hybrid models is that that also can be cloud-based or in the internet, and then those documents can be transmitted to us via an application extender interface and brought into Dynamics directly, so that we can post a voucher inside of Dynamics electronically without having to actually key anything into the system. And then when we drill into it, if it was a paper invoice, we can see the paper invoice. When we drill into it and it's an electronic invoice, we can see what the data was on the electronic invoice, even have a visualization of, say, an EDI file. So there's lots of ways to give everyone the tangible touch and feel that they desire around their invoice process, because so many of us want to look at the invoice. We want to see the invoice before we approve it. And all of that is possible in the world that we're thinking about today. Okay, so I have this last poll question, and we're going to, this one is up and running, Jason, around which is the most important finance objective. And
so this one is actually barriers to improving AP at your company. Would that be with running now? Okay.
Yes, and we can share the results whenever you're whenever. Do they automatically?
Yeah, we'll give it. We can give it about 30 seconds here, and then close it out.
Now, as I was mentioning here, the other component that I like to talk about is the use of efficient data capture. Efficient data capture is the use of what used to be called OCR. And OCR for medium-sized businesses is a very interesting prospect. And I was giving this highlight here of companies that open the mail. And a core component of what they can do is both open the mail and extract the data off of the invoice. In other words, so that you and your staff don't have to do the data entry. This is becoming a best practice, and it used to be something that was really only available to the largest enterprises. So, we know about Home Depot and big companies like Procter & Gamble that have outsourced a lot of their accounts payable entry work to lower-cost labor markets like India or Eastern Europe, Philippines. Today, these Dynamics platforms are being enhanced by companies that are doing this as a third-party outsourced service. So they're offering the technology, the workflow, the electronic invoice platform, and the ability to open the mail, scan the invoices, and do the data entry, which leaves us as accounts payable staff to manage the process, but not manage the time components of it. We know that for a typical accounts payable department, anywhere from 25 to 35% of time is spent managing the keying of invoices into the system. And what we especially like about what's happening on the outside here is that best practice is that we can let organizations do that electronically for us or use OCR technology to do it. which means that it allows our staff to focus on the more value-added activities. What are those? Well, specifically, determining why we have problem invoices coming from a certain department or division of our organization. Working with that department to clean up their purchase orders that may be opened incorrectly. Or training the staff there so that they know how to enter the accounting stream properly. Or to better understand the procurement process. Stream advisors, analysts, very much promote the use of tools that make and reduce the amount of labor we have doing data entry so that our staff can focus more on the value-add work of finding problems, fixing them, and helping organizations better embrace change in their businesses. Because we know that one thing is for sure, change is happening very, very fast inside of both accounts payable and your organizations and outside. And it's getting harder and harder to find the kinds of people that want to do this kind of very manual, labor-intensive work. Certainly, we have much better use for the resources. Our average accounts payable professional has somewhere between 7 and 9 years of experience. And we want them to leverage their experiences, really using their knowledge about the organization, about problems, how to fix problems, instead of focused on what they're doing most of their time on is the low value-added data entry work, which, well, we can be doing better in a new environment. So let's talk about the business case, what we see happening and what organizations find when they move forward with innovation. The business case here usually comes in 3 components. One is I spent a little bit of time talking about the core of it, which is the data entry element. So can we eliminate the lost invoices? Can we eliminate the data entry component? That can save anywhere from 45 to 50% of our time inside of accounts payable. So that's a third of the business case. The next third is using our working capital in new ways. Remember back to my Rubik's Cube, I was saying that the future holds that organizations that automate accounts payable are better able to manage their cash cycle. What does that mean specifically? They're able to better forecast when or how they will pay suppliers. And we can shorten our invoice approval time. For the average organization, it takes about 21 days to get from the invoice date to the day that it gets posted in Dynamics. That's not the pay date, but it's the day that we get the clean approved invoice and the posted in the system. That's on average. Some invoices take 30. Some invoices take 40, 45, 50, or 60. That 21 days means that it's very difficult for us to say, take advantage of early payment discounts. Now, we know that only a small percentage of our suppliers are offering early payment discounts, typically between 8 and 12%. But we do know that many of our suppliers are willing to be paid early if we could pay early. The challenge is we can't pay early because, well, it's taking 21, 23, 29 days. The client site where I am today, the average invoice cycle time is what we call it, is 29 days, which means that for an invoice due in that 30, AP can essentially just post the invoice and make the payment and hopefully stay within terms. The new opportunity, the third of the business case for many of our clients, is coming from offering early payment terms to our suppliers in exchange for a discount. What that means is that we can go to suppliers that didn't offer us a discount on their invoice, but say, Mr. Supplier, this invoice has been approved. It will be paid on March the 30th. If today's March 1st or 2nd. We can pay you today in exchange for that 2% discount. And that's been very helpful for our organizations to show a return on investment on these systems. Another best practice that we've seen is by moving to electronic invoice management. We're seeing organizations save money on procurement, overall lowering their cost of materials purchases by bringing in more information about what they purchased and why. So let's take a look at your latest poll results. We said, well, let's see. We said, what is the barrier to implementing automation of your organization? The most popular choice Well, about, it looks like nearly half of you, lack of budget or business case. And that's very typical. And I'm going to go back to remind and summarize here to help you think about how do you get that business case. The first piece is to conduct an assessment of your AP efficiency. The first element of that is two things. One, how long does it take you to approve invoices in your organization? Not how long does it take AP to process an invoice, but overall the organization, the average time from the invoice date to the approval date. That really points out a weakness that your senior management may not have thought about. In other words, that the sickness is not inside of accounts payable, but inside of the organization as a whole. AP automation cures the ill by providing 100% visibility to where the invoices are all the time. I haven't met a controller or a CFO who isn't hungry about one thing. Where are my invoices, and why do I have such a high accrual number? They're frustrated with what we call the Billy Bob principle. Invoices sitting on Billy Bob's desk while he's out on vacation or hunting, or doing whatever Billy Bob's doing instead of paying his invoices. We call that accruals. Moving with front-end imaging, workflow, electronic documents essentially cuts that visibility window down to a couple of days, and we have everything captured, so our accruals we can calculate instantaneously because we know what's in our system, but just pending. So conducting that assessment, first piece, how long does it take? The second piece I mentioned was how much does it cost? And there's two numbers there. How much does it cost to process an invoice that's clean, that comes through, is posted instantaneously, versus an invoice that requires excess handling and is broken, needs repair work. We call it a disputed or a deduction invoice, something that has some problem on it. Those invoices take 4 to 5 times as long and cost, hence, 4 to 5 times as much. Once we do that, then we can benchmark ourselves against others to highlight the opportunity. How do you benchmark yourselves? Well, Paystream Advisors has reports on how to benchmark yourself on our website at paystreamadvisors.com. They're free. You can download them today, instant. You type in benchmarking in our search button, and you'll be taken right to reports that you can download for free. It'll give you a sense of where you are versus peers in your group. In other words, what's your cost per invoice for your group versus others? The next piece here is the building a bulletproof business case. Now, about half of you said that getting the business case was a challenge. Well, it doesn't have to be, and it can be bulletproof just by going through the first few basics that I was talking about here. What do we need to do to move it forward? Why can we move it forward? What's the benefit? Of course, everyone wants to know what I call WIFFM. What's in it for me? Well, man, what's in it for me? What do we get out of it? The organization gets lower cost, faster approval. And what the seniors really want is improved visibility to where invoices are all the time, reduction of lost invoices. And when the supplier calls, they want them to be able to know, yeah, okay, we see your invoice, but it hasn't been processed yet. From there, the best practice here, the innovators have learned how to plan, attack, and build a roadmap. AP automation and improvement in AP is not something that happens in the first 6 months or a year. This is typically a 3-year journey. And where you can be in 3 years, pretty much about 90% of you could easily get to greater than 50% electronic document within the first 3 years, maybe more. We have clients that are readily achieved using Dynamics platforms enhanced by other automation tools that have achieved 70% electronic document. That means 70% less paper, and that means 70% faster approval processing within 18 months. It's quite easy for an organization to get there within 3 years with the proper planning and roadmap. Here's my picture. Now we're going to turn it over to you for questions. And I see questions coming in on the chat panel. So I'm going to be taking some of those here. and I'll ask you to ask questions in the chat window or the Q&A window, and then I will take them and we will answer them. Let me see my.
All right. Yeah, Henry, thanks again for presenting to us, sharing your thoughts here. And like Henry said, please do ask your questions in the Q&A tab. Don't be shy there. There's about 15 minutes here for question and answer. Henry, there is a question that came in actually through the chat area, but I thought I'd just raise it to you because it's a little specific. And the question was on how, in a paperless environment, the check signer can actually get the review and approach of presenting a check for signature and the backup attached to the check, and sort of that comfort that people have with a paper-based process. Is that a concern you hear often?
Oh, it is, yeah. And we're moving into this image world, right? So very much. You know what? We're all creatures of habit. We like to do things the way we did. So the classic example that your question is asking about is, okay, I'm getting this invoice, say it's $10,000, and it has to go to the CFO, and he has to sign it. And he has to see, and this is a very classic example, and I'm facing this right now with a client, that all checks over $10,000 have to be approved and signed off by the CFO and the controller. So today, those checks are printed out, and then they're routed around with the invoice documents manually, and then the CFO looks through that. The way it's done is to build a report in Dynamics of high-value checks, and so that they're approving off of a report. So all high-value checks are put into a special report, or all checks that go to a certain supplier you want to have go off into a report. Those invoices are held for payment, and inside of the report, the senior manager is working on their screen, can drill in on the report to look at the image of the invoices behind it. So is there an actual printed out image? Could they print it if they wanted it? Yes. Do we have to get them more comfortable with doing it on a screen? Absolutely. And there may be some resistance from, say, some older controllers, some folks that have been doing it a certain way for years and years. By and large, we find that once we build a report-based screen that allows the seniors to use an online report and drill into that report by clicking the invoice number or the vendor number or the invoice dollar amount, and they can see the image, we find that they lose their resistance because now they see this as more convenient to them. Let me give you another example. We're seeing clients now approve invoices on mobile devices. I was talking earlier about iPhones and Androids. What we know especially is that the senior officers of our organization love doing things on their handheld devices because they tend to travel a lot, outside of the office a lot, and they're looking to ways to reduce or unburden themselves from having to be in the office to sign checks. So in this environment, they can see the invoices, they can see the report, go through them, and then they can drill in, even on their Android or Apple device, view the invoice image on their iPhone or their Android. Pretty neat. Let's see. We have a couple of questions here. I see Eli asked, how do you decide which products you recommend for people to evaluate? Okay, so PayStream advisors, analysts study automation technologies for accounts payable and procurement and write consumer reports like guides. Those are also available on our website for free. We also have something called the Solution Source that you can look through, find vendors. PayStream looks at most of the solution providers in the marketplace are covered by our analysts. There's some smaller or other types of providers that we don't cover. We may not have the information out about. They should be in our Solution Source. So from there, you can look and read about these companies. If you need more help, reach out to one of our analysts, and we'll provide you some feedback on which solution providers may work best with your version of Dynamics. which depends on what you want to do. Depends on how you want to do it, how big your organization is it PO-centric or not, the kinds of invoices that you have, the kinds of suppliers you have. There's different types of parameters that make best sense for different kinds of companies. Eli also asked, do you have a list of recommended products for each Dynamics line? That's another great question. In fact, PayStream is writing a research report on technology specifically designed for AP technology, specifically designed for the different Dynamics platforms. It won't be coming out until later this summer. I think it's August. However, it will be comparing about 6 or 7 different solution providers that provide enhancements for accounts payable specifically for different versions of Dynamics. I will direct you to our website. There's lots of different solutions in the marketplace today that enhance Dynamics with an imaging, workflow, electronic invoice, or payments platform. I got another question here from Chris. Chris wanted to know, when calculating the return on investment, we need to calculate, the question here is about cost per invoice. So cost per invoice dimension takes the total labor. So say you have 3 people approving processing invoices inside of accounts payable. You have 3 accounts payable operations specialists, AP processors, and you have 1 director or supervisor, and you have a half person who oversees the department. So you have 3.5 people. You take that labor, you multiply it by their cost, what's their salary rate, plus a gross-up factor, vacations and benefits. Typically, for most of our clients, it's between 25 and 30%. Sometimes 35, depends. You take that number, you add it up, that's your annual cost of accounts payable, and you divide that by the number of invoices. And then the best way then is to figure out what's your discrepancy rate of invoices that need to be touched more than once. If they get touched more than once, they go into that exception category, and you build a separate metric. Is how much is my total cost for invoices for the clean? How much is my total cost for the dirty? I have another question about invoice cycle time analysis. 2 people wanted to know how do you calculate how long it takes for an invoice or on average to be processed in your organization? Well, if you're a Dynamics user, you can do a report that compares the invoice date that you post into your system with the date that it was posted, the voucher date. You build a report that shows your invoice days in 5-day increments. First 0 days, because there's a lot of invoices that come in and are approved on the same day. 0 to 5, or 1 to 5, 6 to 10. You get the idea. And then you do over a period of a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year. Look at how long on average it's best to do it for a year to get a full cycle of your business. How many invoices got approved in each of those buckets in 5-day increments, and build a little graph. Then you'll be able to see where the challenges are. And here's what's very interesting in your building that business case out. When you show the percentage of invoices that are approved on a long scale, for some of you that may be enough business case enough. Your procurement staff, your IT group may say, whoa, we got 30% of our invoices are over 45. I've seen it. And you probably, some of you have that. There's some invoices that are just stuck and have problems. Okay, I have another question here from Bob. And Bob wanted to know typical return on investment and how much money it costs to automate if for your accounts payable operation. Here's what we know. For the average Dynamics user, the automation path, depending on the choices that you're going to do, is usually less than $100,000. Now, that may be a shocker that it's that much. Here's the good news. For most clients, the upfront cost of using a cloud-based automation solution is less than $10,000 upfront. So using cloud-based technologies, you can implement your solution very inexpensively and pay over time. You might pay anywhere from $1 to $1.50 an invoice for the system to process. Depends on what you want them to do. Are they going to open the mail? Are they going to scan the mail? Are they going to do the data capture, the OCR? So there's generally low upfront cost to moving to automation today. But you can spend, these projects can go $100,000 or $125,000 in upfront fees and one-time fees if you're going to move that way. The good news is that the automation comes in a lot of different flavors, and there's a flavor for everyone. Some people like Rocky Road ice cream, and, well, there's a AP automation solution that's for them, just tailored, because there's really just no shortage of providers that provide this kinds of automation and selection tools today. With that, I think we're up against our last time. We very much appreciate you joining us today, and I'll point you to the research at PayStreamAdvisors.com to get some research elements that will help you with your automation efforts. From PayStream Advisors, this is Henry Ijams from Charlotte, North Carolina, signing off. Thank you for joining us today.
All right, Henry Ijams, thank you so much for being with us today. Very much appreciate it, and thanks to our audience as well for the great questions and the participation. And we will be providing a recording of this session coming up in the next few days, so stay tuned. And thanks again for attending.